Beat me to it. Move to the cloud. I might have shut yours off, Sheila. No, you're still on. Okay. All right, all right. For the recording, welcome back. We are ACI course 4, class 6 on April 7th, 2024. Let's gather our minds here as we usually do. Please bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom. And see them there with you. They are gazing at you with their unconditional love for you. Smiling at you with their holy great compassion. Their wisdom radiating from them. That beautiful golden glow encompassing you in its light. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Feel how much you would like to be able to help them. Recognize how the worldly ways we try fall short. How wonderful it will be when we can also help in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they will go on to stop their distress forever. We are learning that that is possible. And so I invite you to grow that wish into a longing. And that longing into an intention. Then turn your mind back to that precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know, what we need to learn yet, what we need to do yet to become one who can help in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please teach us that. They are so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the perfect world they are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands, and we offer it to them, following it with our promise to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayer. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamyaya Tayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may all beings reach their total awakening for the benefit of every other. Last class, we were talking about omniscience and what it is to be omniscient. And whether or not omniscience automatically means omnipotent. And as a side product, whether or not there could be such a thing as an omniscient, omnipotent creator being who has always been that, and so unchanging. So in the different discussions we had, one was the reasoning that the mind of an omniscient being must be changing. Not just a creator being must be changing, but an omniscient being, who's perceiving all things in all times, all at the same time. Sounds like that would be unchanging. But the reasoning was that a mind that's focusing on a changing object has to change, right? To see the object in the next way that it is. So even a mind that's perceiving all things changing and unchanging all the time does not mean that that mind that's perceiving changing things is not also changing. It must be. then your quiz asked, what does a being have to know to be all-knowing? Like, what do we mean by omniscient? And we might think, well, they know all knowable things, which at first blush would be, everything in the Encyclopedia Britannica. Anybody old enough to know what that even is? When I was in grade school and you had to write a report, you pulled out the encyclopedia, right? And you read everything you could about your topic, and then you wrote a summary of it. And oh, good job, right? It was our resource tool. Now it's the omniscient Google. But that's not the power of being omniscient. The usefulness of being omniscient is that mind knows perfectly all that needs to be taken up and given up in order to stop perpetuating suffering. Now that's way more important than knowing every topic in the Encyclopedia Britannica. Way more important, because with that information, there's nobody we can't help. There's no one we don't know how to help. So the omniscience of knowing the suffering, the causes of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and how to bring that about is actually the most important part of what it is to be omniscient. So then your quiz also asked, the question was, why is the Buddha unerring? But it's really asking, how can we know that the Buddha is unerring? And the answer key just gave this really simple answer, but you have to think about it for a while to really get the connection. How do we know the Buddha is unerring? Because he teaches about suffering in a way that we can personally directly confirm. Like, that's the argument. That's how we know a Buddha is unerring, because we can confirm one thing that they say. And it's like, how does that confirm that something else they said couldn't be right? And it starts this circular argument, it seems. Well, if they're omniscient and they know perfectly what we need to give up and take up, and in that omniscience, they are perceiving every existing thing and its true nature simultaneously all the time, directly, then that means they're also hearing themselves say what they say when they teach somebody. So if they're hearing themselves say stuff and they're omniscient, then they're only going to say stuff that they know is the stuff that their audience needs to hear in order to take up and give up, in order to stop perpetuating samsara. So they hear everything they say. We hear some of it. And one part of it, the truth of suffering, we can directly confirm. The other stuff we can't yet. But if they heard themselves say the suffering part, and they heard themselves say the cause of suffering part, and the end of suffering and the path to it, and we can confirm one of them, then we've confirmed them all. Like it's like, whoa, I don't know about that. But that's the reasoning. If we couldn't confirm any part of Buddha's teachings for ourselves, with either direct experience or by our own correct reasoning, if we could not confirm, then we would have no way to really know that anything the Buddha said was correct. So it's significant that we can confirm the fact of suffering, the truth of suffering. And then we tend to live in a world where you push all suffering away and deny it and don't want any part of it. And here's Buddhism that says, look, that's your ticket to confirming that you could in fact end it, is to absolutely confirm that there's nothing not suffering in our world, our human ignorant world. And in a way, it's like, well, it's kind of a relief to hear it said. I'm not so odd after all. But we don't stay there, of course, right? It would lead to a terrible depression. But it's our start. So how do we know the Buddha is unerring? Because he teaches about suffering so perfectly, and we can directly confirm that for ourselves. All right. So that brings us to actual class for this evening, which is the 4 reasonings of the forward order. It's called. Which is going to help us sort out what I just said. So here's our vocabulary. This looks like Luke June, but when you hear Geshe-la say it, there's a prenasal in there somewhere, and it sounds more like Lungjung. Lungjung. It's a short, hard, fast U, short U, but there's somehow a prenasal in there. I don't understand it. So it's Lungjuk and Lungdok. Lungjuk means the forward order. Lungdok means the reverse order. Meaning a sequence of things, a sequence of thought that leads you to a conclusion. There are teachings that consider a certain teaching in the forward order, and there are ways to consider that same teaching in the backward order, which gives you a different perspective on the meaning of the teaching. So for example, the classic one is the 12 links of the wheel of life, which some of us have studied, where it's the explanation of how it is that we perpetuate our suffering world, where suffering comes from, right? And it starts with our ignorance, and because of our ignorance, we make karma, and because of that karma, we have we have birth, And with the birth, we get heaps. And with the heaps, we get aging and illness, in some order. And from that, we get death. And at the moment of death, some kind of grasping pushes that projecting karma into a new birth. And because that projecting karma was infused with the ignorance that pushed it, we start the whole cycle again. The mind moves, karma. Form comes about, contact comes about, grasping comes about, all of those things. But in the end, death and forced rebirth. And all those different 12 steps describe how that process happens from one to the next, to the next, to the next. If you study that in reverse, if I want to stop death, what do I have to do? I have to stop the birth. How do I stop birth? I have to stop that projecting karma. How do I stop projecting karma? I have to stop that specific kind of grasping that happens at death. How do I stop that? How do I stop that? It's going to bring us all the way back around to that raw karma that's collected but not committed, and the ignorance that pushes that. So you get different information studying it in the reverse order than you do studying in the forward order. Our text, the Pramanavartika, uses the reasoning in the forward order, the Lungjuk, for becoming a being who is totally correct, for becoming Sema. That particular text goes through a forward order of how that happens. One can use that same sequence of arguments in reverse to figure out how to do it. Like the forward order is the connection between becoming that, and the backward order is what you have to stop doing in order to reach it. We're just going to do the forward order. Working our way through the Master Dignaga's opening statement, I bow down to that being with these 5 qualities: the protector, those gone to bliss, the teacher, those who wish to benefit sentient beings, and those who have turned into persons with valid perception. We want to know how is it that we can know that this being we call Buddha is in fact an authoritative source for how to stop our suffering. And maybe we have the seeds to hear those 5 qualities of a Buddha and just go, yeah, understand. Or we think we understand what that means, and we're attracted. But those 5 are all related. And when we understand them deeply, we'll see how, in order to be one who has turned correct, one must also have these other 4 qualities, that they actually, I don't want to say come in a sequence, but they're all interrelated. And then from that, we can come to better perceive what started that process happening. because then we know what we need to do to start our process happening. So we need to review logical statements, because we're going to explore some. When a logical statement is written, the first statement is stating the topic of consideration. In the Tibetan, that sentence will end with chuchen, which means let's consider. Then, second statement is what we say is true about that topic under consideration. It's called our assertion. In the Tibetan, the statement that is the assertion almost always ends with yinte. It means it is. The third statement is our statement of our reason for the assertion we made about the topic we're talking about. And in the Tibetan, that sentence usually ends with Be'echir. Sometimes it's Yinbe Echir because it means it is because they put this yin down with the Be'echir. So then when we're checking a logical statement, if you recall, we check to be sure that there is in fact a relationship between the topic we're considering and the reason we're giving about it. Just can those two be related? Not whether they are or not, but just can they? Then we check if the reason were true, not whether or not it is, just if it were true, would it necessarily be the case that the assertion we make about it must be true? And if not, we don't go any further. If we find there's no relationship between the topic and the reason, then we don't look any further. If there is, we check. If 3 is true, is 2 necessarily true? Not whether it is in real life, just logically. If it is, then you negate your assertion and look at what happens to the statement of your reason. If negating your assertion necessarily also negates the reason for the assertion, then you have an airtight logical syllogism. And if we're being logical, we'll go, oh, then what we asserted about the topic is true. And we'll change our whole behavior around it. You know, commonly, we agree, and in the end we say, but no. Because we're so glued to our own beliefs. So just keep this in mind. When we're doing debate in order to learn something new about the topic under consideration, the person making the logical syllogism will intentionally say something wrong. And then the debate goes back and forth to reveal what's incorrect about the original statement. That's not what's happening in the syllogisms of this class. These syllogisms are the classical ones that have already been hashed out and proven to be true. So we're not needing to argue with them. We're trying to figure out, what do they really mean? How do they really prove anything to us? Because they don't seem so airtight logical proof until we get an explanation. So we have those five. The one who turned correct, we need to get him in the right order. No. I bow down to the protector. The one gone to bliss, the teacher, the one who wishes to benefit all beings, the one who's become person of valid perception. So we have this sequence. We're going to investigate each one, and then we're going to see the way they're trying to prove the first one. You have to prove something else before the first one proves anything. I'll just show you. All right, so there's a lot of Tibetan here. That's not so important as just planting the seeds to hear it and read it, but then to see how the sequence of logical arguments go. So Tumpa Chu Chen means consider the teacher. Technically, it should be T with a capital T, but my computer does weird things with capitals. So Tumpa Chu Chen, consider the teacher. Se margyur te, this is the yin te. Se margyur, we learned, was they are one who's turned correct. That's our assertion about the teacher. Why are we saying that? Because Yimbe sure that he, she, they, the one we're talking about, whoever it is, Kyopa Yimbe sure. It means protector. They are the protector. So this logical statement is, consider the teacher. They are one who's turned correct because they are the protector. And it's like in English, when we say because of that, it should somehow like reveal to us the truth of the thing we're saying about it, right? Let's go for Chinese food because I like it better, right? And that's enough to say why I'm suggesting we go for Chinese food. But here, consider the teacher. He's one turned correct because he is the protector. We can reword it a little bit. Consider the teacher. If they are one who has turned correct, they could be the protector. Or how do I know the teacher is one who's turned correct? Because they are the protector. But for any way we try to reword that, we first need to know, first of all, we need to be clear who we're talking about as the teacher. We're talking about a Buddha, whatever that means to you. We need to know what we mean by they are Tsemar Gyur. We talked about that before. They are one who was not always perceiving everything directly, correctly. And they became a being who can only have direct, correct perception. And then Kyupa, the protector, what does it mean to be a protector? And, you know, when our house is on fire, we call the fire department because we know that they can and will do their best to protect me. We don't call the grocery store when our house is on fire. The grocery store can't protect us. Fire department can. So we kind of have a sense of what we mean by a protector. But how is it that we're using that term protector when we're talking about a totally enlightened being? Tom, would you mind keeping your questions to the end for me? Because my train of thought's going to get too easily scattered. Thank you. Consider the teacher. They are one who has turned correct. Why do I say that? Because they are our protector. We should say, well, wait a minute. How do we know they are our protector? And why does that prove that they are one who's turned correct? What would we need for someone to be our protector? We would need them to know how to help me, right? So for the Buddha to be my protector, they would need to know specifically how to help me. Right? Yeah, I want them to help everybody else too. But if I held them to be someone who could help everybody else, but didn't really know what I needed, then, their teaching isn't, I'm gonna be limited in my ability to benefit from it if I don't recognize that they know what I need better than I do. So because we're still wondering about the validity of, because Buddha is the protector, that's how we know they've turned correct. They give us this second syllogism that says, again, consider the teacher, Tenpa Chö Chen, Kyopa Yinte. So we're taking the protector that was our reason for why they have turned correct, and now we're investigating the protector. Consider the Buddha. They are the protector. Why do I say that? Drima Pang Peicher. Drima Pang means gotten rid of all their negativities. I went by that one too fast. We'll go on. Drima Pang means to have ponged, cleared away all stain. Drima means stain. It means all bad qualities. Because a being, or once a being, has cleared out all of their bad qualities, they can be a protector. Because a Buddha has cleared all of their bad qualities, that's why we can know they are the protector. What does it mean to clear out all bad qualities? So it means that that being had mental afflictions and seeds for more, had ignorance, driving the whole big mistake, got taught and figured out how to clean out those mental afflictions and seeds for more, and cleaned out their obstacles to omniscience. What do we know is necessary, a necessary step for being able to stop all of our mental afflictions and seeds for more? We need to perceive ultimate reality at least once, right, for the first time, in order to stop perpetuating the ignorance that is the cause of the grasping, that is the cause of mental afflictions. So by saying this being has cleaned out all their stains, it implies that they went from an ignorant being to one who has seen emptiness directly, and then applied what they needed to do to clean out their mental afflictions and seeds for more, and went on to clear out their obstacles to omniscience, because those are still stains. A being who's reached nirvana then would not qualify as a protector, doesn't qualify as someone who has turned correct. So by clearing out all mental afflictions and seeds for more, and the obstacles to omniscience, that being is now experiencing directly, correctly, all appearing things, and the no self nature of all those appearing things, perceiving appearing reality and ultimate reality simultaneously. That's what it is to dream up. So now, if they have completely cleared out all their negativities and the obstacles to omniscience because they saw emptiness directly and did everything they needed to do to purify themselves and make the goodness to become omniscient, that means they have experienced suffering. They've experienced the causes of suffering. They've experienced that there is a cessation to that suffering, at least for those 20 minutes of the direct perception of emptiness. And by the time they've completed that process, they have identified the path to the cessation of that suffering. So just because they've done it for themselves, how does that prove that they know what we need? You know, they at least know what they had to do. And so there's still a little shred of doubt there, right? Consider the teacher. They are one who's turned correct, perceiving, having nothing but direct, correct perception always. That's what that means. Why do I say that? Because they are the protector. Well, wait, that doesn't follow. Consider the teacher. They are the protector because they've cleaned out all their mental afflictions, seeds for them, and obstacles to omniscience. Well, really, is that enough? Like, I'm not totally convinced yet. Okay, then. Consider the teacher. They are one who's cleaned out all their mental afflictions, seeds for them, and obstacles to omniscience. Why do I say that? Because Tongni ki tumpa yimpe here. Tongni ki tumpa means they teach emptiness. What's my reason for saying that this being has cleared out all their bad deeds? Because they teach us emptiness. How do I know they've cleaned out all their bad seeds? Because they teach us emptiness. Now, here's a odd piece. In those 5 qualities that we were talking about, none of those 5 qualities says they've cleaned out all their negativity. But the term, the being gone to bliss, Deshin Shekpa, that's Drima Pang is a synonym. The implication is that when you have completely cleared all your stains, you are one gone to bliss, Deshan Shakpa. And Buddha often refers to himself as one gone to bliss. And, that has a higher connotation, but one gone to bliss, if you just imagine being free of, any kind of mental affliction, it's not that you're just now neutral. It's that every instant, like every 65 seeds ripening per instant are all pleasure and more pleasure. Like not any kind of specific pleasure, just plain pleasure. The pleasure of such extraordinary goodness. Goodness ripening upon goodness, ripening upon goodness. It's called Deshan Shekpa, gone to bliss. Bliss and more bliss. You can't reach that without having made the goodness of clearing out all your stain. So it's not just you clear out stain and you become neutral. The goodness of clearing out stain brings us to bliss. Emptiness being an absence, you can't say, oh, to see emptiness directly is blissful. If you're still thinking there's a me who's experiencing bliss while I'm experiencing emptiness, because that's not ultimate reality. But I'm struggling with the English here. We start with an object and we say, recognize its emptiness. What if the object we start with is emptiness? And we say, recognize the emptiness of emptiness, which it has that. Then the emptiness we started with would be the ultimately pleasurable appearing thing, right? It's not an appearing thing because it's an absence, but our idea of it would be extraordinarily blissful. If emptiness could be the appearing thing of emptiness, it would be extraordinarily blissful, is what I'm trying to say. Which is why one of your qualities as a Buddha will be one gone to bliss. Bliss, bliss, and more bliss. How do we know they're bliss, bliss, and more bliss? Because they teach emptiness. What? Now, it is very pleasurable to teach emptiness. But what's so important? Let's go through the sequence again. Buddha is one who's turned correct. Why do I say that? Because he's the protector. Well, why do you say he's the protector? I say he's the protector because he's cleared out all his stains. Well, how can you say he's cleared out all his stains? Well, he's cleared out all his stains because he teaches emptiness. What's so important about teaching emptiness? Especially for somebody for whom our premise is that they are perceiving directly, correctly all the time. And they had to go through the direct perception of ultimate reality at least once in order to become this being who is direct, correct always. And because of that, they know what I mean to give up and take up. And I can trust that because I know they went through it. And they went through it because they saw emptiness directly. And so they teach about emptiness because of that is such a critical experience for beings to have in order to clear out all of their stains, in order to become the protector, in order to do what a being of valid perception does. So we might say, well, why does teaching emptiness, how is it that that's proving this sequence that takes us back to the Semagirte? Like, what's the significance of Buddha teaching emptiness? And they give us this fourth reasoning. Consider the teacher, Tong Niki Tumpa Yinte. He is the one who teaches emptiness. Why do I say that? Tukje Chempo Yube, because they have holy great compassion. Because of their compassion, they teach emptiness. Because they teach emptiness, we know they've cleaned out all their stains. Because they've cleaned out all their stains, we know they can protect us. Because they can protect us, they are a being of direct, correct perception. It still doesn't quite, right? The gears don't quite fit. Let's talk about compassion and great compassion and holy great compassion. The Tibetan word for compassion is Ningje. Je means Lord. Ning means essence. It's like the Lord of essence, but meaning the Lord of our heart, our heart essence. Jampa means love. There is a distinction made here. Ningje, the essence of our heart, is this concern for others' suffering, concern for suffering. Let's not say just others, our own and others. To be concerned with suffering is what's meant by compassion. Jampa, love, means to be concerned with happiness, right? To love someone means you want them to be happy. Our own self-love would be, I want to be happy. We should both be happy and want to be happy. The mistake is how we make it. So Ningje is being concerned for others' suffering. Plain old Ningje, human Ningje, is, oh, that person's suffering, I'm sorry. But no sense of interest in helping them stop it, let alone knowing how to help them stop it. Right? It's a big step for some to just be willing to notice someone else is suffering enough to feel compassion. Right? It's not necessarily a nice feeling, right? To see somebody suffering and not be able to do anything about it, it hurts. So mostly we learn to look away. They say it's a quality of our heart, compassion. I think in the West, we tend to say, oh, you know, my heart's so full of love. Personally, I think the source of love comes from the navel chakra, but that's just me, not scripture. And this thing that we say is love in our heart is, in fact, this compassion. Then Ningje Chempo, Chempo means great. So great compassion. By great compassion, they mean a compassion that has grown along with some sense of understanding where suffering comes from. So that part of the compassion is, I really would like to be able to help them. I wish that I could. I'll even try to some extent. So taking some small amount of personal responsibility for the suffering that we see. Wanting to help. Tukje Shempo. The Tukje is the way you say Ningje when you're speaking to a being that you honor. So a fully enlightened being doesn't have Ningje, they have Tukje. It's just an honorific word for talking about the same quality of mind, compassion. But the additional factor of the fully enlightened being, their compassion is such that they do, in fact, help that being. Right? They see the suffering. They want to stop the suffering. They do something to stop the suffering, but not in the sense of like, oh, you know, run to the person and get them a wheelchair. Right? Because that the being with Tukje Chempo is not even necessarily in a form that the suffering person can recognize. But from the enlightened being's place, who is directly perceiving all of this constantly and directly perceiving what that person needs to give up and take up, their emanation does something. Their compassion motivates something to happen in that mind. The most important thing that a being can do for another to help stop suffering is to teach emptiness. Right? Is to teach the pen thing. Now, you can't go to somebody that's just broken their leg and say, look, I'm going to help you. Would you just listen to this pen thing? And then we'll get your leg braced and we'll get you to the hospital, right? That's not obviously useful in the moment. But anything else we do for that person with the broken leg will be helpful, and they'll go on to suffer again in another way. A fully enlightened being will do anything that anyone needs, and they teach emptiness over and over and over and over again. You know, it's probably happening right now, and I don't know about you, but I can't hear it. Because to learn about the true nature of ourselves and any experience and any existing thing is the doorway through which we stop our suffering. Our own and everyone else's. And so their compassion propels them to do everything and anything, including teaching emptiness. So consider the Buddha. They are one who teaches emptiness because they have this holy great compassion. By implication, then, compassion is the start of our career path to Buddhahood. Because without it, if a Buddha were a Buddha and could become a Buddha without compassion, they would know what we need to give up and take it up, and they wouldn't care. And so they wouldn't teach. And so they wouldn't protect us. Which, if they could be aware of suffering and not do something to alleviate that suffering, they wouldn't be able, they wouldn't stay a Buddha. Like, it's illogical. It's not possible to become a Buddha without having that compassion. It's a really important piece to catch, that compassion, as it grows from plain old compassion to great compassion, wanting to actually do something, to holy great compassion, actually having the capacity to help. That the process of that growth is the process through which we are cleaning out our own negativities, reaching the omniscience through which we know what and how to teach. And then what gets taught is those four Arya truths, of which one, any suffering being can directly confirm for themselves. So in teaching emptiness, a Buddha is teaching us the ultimate thing, right? That ultimate idea through which we ourselves can stop our suffering. Buddha can't make us stop our suffering. We figured that one out. They can only teach us how to do it, and hopefully motivate us and inspire us and coax us and cajole us, but they can't make us do it. And so they teach the principles, they teach the highest thing and the process for applying our own growing wisdom to our behavior. And they know that that's what's necessary because that's what they had to do. And in the process of doing it, they help lots of other people do it too. Okay. So then part of the implication is that the only way to get rid of all of our bad seeds is to see emptiness directly. And so out of our growing compassion, that would become an important thing to try to do. All right, let's take a break. There's this drill do and kill do, and I don't know what it's doing there. So I need to find it. You guys take a break and I need to find my notes. Okay, drill do and cube do I was supposed to use to help us understand how Ningje grows into Ningje Chenpo. Ningje is that compassion in an ordinary being. And the term dreldu means just a sense of wanting to be separated from suffering, right? Either it's my own suffering, self-compassion, or the other person's suffering. I wish they could be separated from that suffering. Dreldu. It's ordinary compassion. Then there's this sense of kyobdu, which kyob is the same root word here as kyupa, which is the protector. So here, kyobdu is a level of compassion in which we really wish that that person be free. Like this, Jaldu is just, oh, they're suffering. I wish it didn't have to happen. Kyobdu is, I wish they could be freed. But it still does not have the sense, I will be the one that will get them free. There's a big gap between our kyobdu, compassion, oh, I really want them to be completely free, and our tukje chenpo, I am helping them get free. On the way there, our compassion is motivating us to try to help others get free. Even as we're aware that worldly things will fall short, we do them anyway. And we're growing our need, our compulsion to free ourselves of all our negative seeds so that we don't have the negative seeds to see what we do for them not fail, or we don't have the seeds to see them go back and make more suffering, or we don't have the seeds to see them as ignorant suffering beings in the first place, right? Our own compassion for all the suffering that we see drives our own personal spiritual behavior change. And as Tom was saying in the break, we're logical beings. We come to a logical conclusion and we still act from the old belief. What will help us shift that is as we understand where suffering comes from, both our own and others, that complacency in behavior or attachment to habitual behavior will start to shake loose by growing our compassion towards others. For a Mahayanist, of course, we are talking Mahayana here. All right, so the sequence has been how do we know a Buddha is totally correct? Because he's the protector. Well, what is it about being a protector that I can rely upon him? If he is the protector, he must know my suffering perfectly and what I need to do about it. So let's see if he might know that. So consider the teacher, he is the protector because he has cleared out all of his obstacles. He's one who's gone to bliss. What does it mean to clear out all the stains? They've gotten rid of all their negative qualities, which includes their obstacles to perceiving the appearing nature of things and the empty nature of things simultaneously, including me, including everybody, including what they hear themselves say or have ever said or will ever say. So how do I know the Buddha is one who's cleared out all their negativities, that they're one who's gone to bliss? Because they teach us emptiness. They hear themselves teaching emptiness because they directly experience that perceiving ultimate reality is the doorway to the end of all suffering. They did do it once, and they're perceiving everything directly always now. So they still are directly perceiving how experiencing ultimate reality puts an end to all suffering, not the instant that it happens for the first time, but eventually. So that's all they really want to do is teach emptiness. And they say the most powerful aspect of Buddhas is their speech, not their actions, not their mind, but their speech, because it's through the speech that they teach. Because he teaches emptiness. All right. Then the last one, consider the teacher. Why do I say he's the one who teaches emptiness? Like, how do we know? Doesn't make sense. How do we know? What's so important about the Buddha teaching emptiness? Why is it that emptiness is so important to the Buddha to teach? Because this being has this holy great compassion. Not just, I see your suffering, I want it to end. Not even just, I see your suffering and I'll do something to try to get it to end. It's they see our suffering and they see that it's just a big mistake that we're making. And they already see us free of it. And in their great compassion, like they just want to infuse us with what we need to stop perpetuating the mistake. So teaching emptiness is the key factor to us growing actually the compassion through which we will stop perpetuating the negativity that perpetuates our ignorance, that perpetuates the negativity, that blocks us from seeing emptiness directly. So Buddha teaching emptiness is the most compassionate thing they can do, which gives us a clue, right? What's the highest thing you can do to help somebody? Teach them emptiness, not in the middle of their problem. Help their problem. Worldly way. Doesn't matter that they're going to go suffer later in another way. Help them anyway. And when you've gained their confidence and you've shown by example, you know, you don't have to be so upset by these things that go wrong, go wrong, go wrong. They'll ask you, you know, what's your secret? What do you know? And you say, sit down. You have 20 years. I'll teach you everything I know. Literally. And encourage them to start on and stay on their path through thick and thin, right? Things get worse at first sometimes. So how do we know the Buddha is the teacher? Because he's got holy great compassion. Because he's got holy great compassion, we know he's somebody who's turned correct. Again, it's like circular, I don't get it. But the important piece here is, okay, then compassion is the first gear that needs to be put in motion in order to become a being who can help anybody, let alone ourselves. So the discussion says, well, how long does it take to go from just plain old drilde, recognizing somebody's suffering and, oh, I'm sorry, to Ningje Chenpo, to Tukje Chenpo? How long does that take? They say, you know, from the first inkling that you would like to be one who could stop others' suffering to reaching Buddhahood, 3 times 10 to the 60th countless eons. That's all. That's a really long time. And it's not the number of Earth around the sun years. It's a much longer time than that. It's the time it takes to burn off negativity and grow the goodness, however long that takes. And we'll learn the details of that in another course. But it's a really, really long time, which means there must be a string of me's on the path working on it for that long a time, or else it's impossible to reach. It's impossible for there to be a Buddha if there's not more than one life. If there's not at least 3 times 10 to the 60th great eons of lifetimes, or more than that. So in at least Master Dignaga and Dharmakirti's time, there were people who said, look, Buddhas must not be possible because you only have this one life. When your body dies, your mind dies, everybody can see it. So if you're saying that a Buddha has to develop this holy great compassion to be a Buddha, they don't have enough time to do it in one lifetime. There's no such thing. It's a compelling argument because it is a very common belief that the mind is part of the body. So there was a belief system, people with a belief system that held to that. They're called Sharvaka, is the way it is in the notes and the answer key, although I've seen it Shravaka as well. I'm not sure which one is correct. But this is a group of people who believe that the mind stops when the body stops. So when you're dead, you're dead. And you have this one life. And, make the most of it. Be nice, but I'm not sure why. It's just more pleasant to be nice, but, when your life is done, it's done. So Master Dharmakirti it takes a little bit of a detour to show how past and future lives are true, in order to help them recognize this sequence of what it takes to reach the compassion that compels the teaching, the emptiness that shows us that this being who's teaching us is one who has turned correct, used the direct perception of emptiness to clear out all their negativities and obstacles to omniscience, so that now when they teach, what they hear themselves teaching is absolutely correct, because that's what omniscience is. And then they teach us the 4 Arya truths, because they know someday we will experience those directly. But until we do, the one that we can confirm is the first one, the truth of suffering. And if we have confirmed that the one who taught the truth of suffering can only hear themselves, right, have direct, correct perception, and we've proved this one, then we know their direct, correct perception is true when they're teaching the other 3, driven by their holy great compassion. So next class actually goes into what are the causes for the mind. This class, Master Dharmakirti is saying, look, what do we really believe happens when a new life starts? Like, do we in fact believe that for humans, at least, the egg and sperm come together and then the cells have some awareness in them? In which case, do they come from the mother? Or do they come from the father? Do they come half from mother, half from father? At what point, do those cells become aware? Does it take 2 of them or 4 of them or 16 of them? Or, when and how does that actually happen? If we believe that the mind is in the body, then the mind starts when the body starts, when those 2 come together, right? And you have a fetus forming. And then that would mean that when that body dies, the mind ends as well. And it does look like that. If you've ever been around a dead body, right? There is clearly no awareness going on there. But so the Sharvakas, they have 3 reasonings for why the mind dies with the body. 3 arguments. They say, first of all, the mind is a quality of the body in the same way that alcohol, when ingested, has the ability to make you drunk. So they say the mind is inside our body and has the ability to influence our body in the same way that alcohol has the ability to influence us when it gets ingested, right? A glass of alcohol in the glass doesn't affect us. We ingest it, right? We get intoxicated. The mind has to be inside the body to drive it, to influence it. So the mind must be inside the body. Number two, they say, and look, the mind is a part of the nature of the body, like a wall and the design you put on the wall. So you have a blank wall, you paint a picture on it. Now the picture is on the wall. If you had no wall, even if you wanted to paint the picture, there'd be no place to paint it. If you had no painting the picture, then the wall would have no picture on it. It takes both. The body supports the mind supports the body, like a picture on a wall. Third reason they say, the mind is a result of the body, like a lamp and its light. A light only comes on when the lamp is lit. The mind only comes on when the body is alive. Can't you see that? It's compelling, isn't it? You know, if we haven't personally had some direct experience of a past life, most of us don't remember being conceived. So it's hard to say what's that first moment of mind of this life. But we know there had to have been one, because here we are in this life. We'll go into it further in next class. This class's meditation assignment is to investigate, what do you think your mind really is? I'm still not completely clear on that. You know, what's the difference between me and my mind? Which one trumps which one? It's not so clear. Try to find your mind. Where is it? What is its relationship with your body? Don't just jump to the conclusion, oh, projections, right? Really use your sense of awareness and exploration to, like, what is this thing, mind? I'll give you a clue, that which is clear and aware. Like, explore, what do you identify more with? Your body or your mind? We certainly make greater effort to take care of our body than we do to take care of our mind, don't we? Yet it's the mind that goes on, not the body. Interesting. This is a hard class to work out this reasoning of the forward order. We want each reasoning to be so clear that it's like, oh yeah, I see. And the way it's worded, for me, it still isn't clear. And so when I was working with it, I just kept rewording in my meditation and review until I like caught the connection between this sequence. It's not that one causes the next. It's that each one of those four reveals something that can confirm the syllogism from before it. And it has to do with thinking about the qualities of the quality of the reason, what we mean by it, what the ramifications of it are, that will help us understand why they're saying, because they are the protector, they are one who's turned correct. It's like they have to have been turned correct in order to be the protector, right? It's not because they became the protector, they became correct. It's not cause and effect. It's ramification. And maybe that'll help you like chew on it, and see if you can catch this connection. And the important connection being between the development of compassion, starting this ball rolling, to leading towards becoming one who has turned correct, an omniscient being. Okay, so we're done a few minutes early. Again, I'm gonna bank those because I'm gonna need them later. But I'm happy to stay and try and hash this out with you if you'd like. Otherwise, I'll let you go to bed early. Going once, going twice. All right, let's do our dedication. So remember that person we wanted to be able to help. We learn stuff that we will use to help them in that deep and ultimate way someday, whether you believe it or not. And that's a great, great goodness. The struggle alone is a major step forward. So please be happy with yourself. And think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hand. Recall your own precious holy guide. See how happy they are with you. Feel your gratitude to them, your reliance upon them. Ask them to please stay close, to continue to guide you and inspire you and help you understand. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accepted and blessed. And they carry it with them right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. That love, that compassion, that wisdom. It feels so good, we want to keep it forever. And so we know to share it by the power of the goodness that we've just done. May all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the true ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. So use those 3 long exhales to share this goodness with that one person. To share it with everyone you love. To share it with every being you've ever seen or heard of, human and otherwise. See them all filled with happiness, filled with loving kindness, shining it forth to others. And may it be so. Okay, thank you very much. I'm stopping the
you.
recording. I wish I could make this more clear.